What is up, everybody? I am Kevin Iole. Thank you for joining me. I am with my friend George Zapata. We are going to talk Canelo versus Crawford. The fight is Saturday at Allegiant Stadium here in Las Vegas. I am in Las Vegas. George is in Berwick. George, how are you today, my friend?
Kevin, good to see you as always. It's I'm seeing you more now that you're retired.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I got a lot of calls this week. I haven't had a lot of stuff going on in terms of media appearances since I retired, but this week has been nuts. I did a couple things yesterday. Today I was on this morning with Bostonian in the book. That's going to be on sportsgrid.com. That went really well. I'm doing a thing for MMA Junkie later today. We're going to record that. They're doing a watch along on Saturday. What's up, Jeffrey? And they're doing a watch along Saturday. So they're going to do my little preview during their show sometime. Tonight I'm on a radio station in Houston talking boxing. Tomorrow morning, I start on a radio station in Omaha. I have something, I forget what else, tomorrow afternoon. And then Friday, I'm going to be in studio with Jim Rome here in Las Vegas. And I will be talking Canelo Crawford with Jim live in person. So
in studio?
Yeah. He actually has a podcast studio in the Fontainebleau Hotel. So I am going to join him in there, and that should be a lot of fun. I will be on at 1:20 Pacific, 4:20 Eastern on Friday, and we'll do one full segment on the fight.
Oh boy, you're asking a lot of the makeup girl if you're going live.
Yeah, no, I know. I've always had that issue, right? And that's why our things are so highly attended because people know that I can't afford to get a makeup person on here, so now we're in big trouble. But let's switch into the fight. I mean, first of all, do you agree with me? Like, I think this is the biggest fight of the year. We had Usyk and Tyson Fury fight earlier. We had Usyk fight Daniel Dubois. And what's up, Diz? So we had a lot of big fights going on, but to me, this seems like the fight of the year.
Well, it's weird that you should say that because the fight of the year, yes, by far, as far as skills and matchup wise, yes. The fact that there hadn't been so much buzz until this coming week, like you were telling me, I was shocked. I mean, I talked to Fred Sternberg a week ago, and he said really there wasn't much buzz there.
Who was it?
That's Frederick. We call him Frederick, but Fred Sternberg.
Yeah, I don't think I ever heard.
Legendary Hall of Famer. But
that guy. Okay,
yeah,
now I remember. Well, let me say this, because I think this is an interesting, comparison. Mayweather Pacquiao fight, right? It was first talked about in 2009. I know I wrote a column after Pacquiao stopped Miguel Cotto. I wrote a column on that fight, and I said what they ought to do is make Mayweather versus Pacquiao at that point. So that was November of 2009, and then for over 5 years, George, all I did every time I was on the radio, and I did a ton of radio hits or TV, are Mayweather and Pacquiao ever going to fight? Then the week of the fight, let me explain this to you. I was working for Yahoo Sports when that fight happened. When they had the NBA game meeting, and that kind of set everything in motion where the fight was going to happen. When the fight was finally announced, I wrote every single day at least one story, except for one, and that it was announced in February, until after the fight, which was in May, and then I wrote 3 weeks after the fight. That's how much interest there was. And everywhere I went in Las Vegas, no matter where I was, UFC event, out to dinner with my wife, shopping, people, who's going to win Mayweather Pacquiao? What do you think about Mayweather? It was unbelievable. And I remember fight week, I said to Dana White, because Dana White actually worked with us at Yahoo for that. He was an analyst. Nicole Zalumis was our host. Myself and Dana were fight analysts for that show, breaking the fight down and everything. And I remember saying to Dana off the air, I thought it would do 4 million on pay-per-view. And he thought it was going to do an astronomical number, but he scoffed at 4 million. And of course, it ended up doing 4.6 million. It was just an incredible number. no fight has ever had that. The biggest fight I can remember other than that was Tyson Holyfield 2. Tyson Holyfield 1 was big, but not a lot of people gave Holyfield a chance. Tyson Holyfield 2, because now Holyfield wins the first fight, is massive, and everybody was into that fight. But I can't remember anything like Mayweather Pacquiao in my lifetime.
No, that was massive. But I remember years ago when these fights were made and when they were coming down, some of them were 2-3 months out before when they really started building up. Now times have changed. The pay-per-view model really, and this being free on Netflix with a subscription, I mean, it's really changed. I was shocked that the fight was coming up so quickly.
Yeah. Well, here's a difference, and I think it's something that's going to get used to. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but and I'm not actively working anymore, so I can't confirm anything, but this is kind of what I think. UFC has 46 events a year, plus when you add the Contender Series in, right? A lot of times they that's a 10-week thing, and the Ultimate Fighter, they have multiple shows a week that they do, so they're promoting every single week virtually, right?
Right.
And so they can't go out ahead and promote one event all the time like boxing would do, right? So if Crawford Canelo was being promoted by, say, Golden Boy or Top Rank or Eddie Hearn, they would be doing for 3 months is promoting Canelo Crawford, Canelo Crawford, Canelo Crawford, and it would be in the media a lot more. UFC puts stuff out, right? Or I should say Zuffa Boxing, not UFC, but we know they're one and the same. But then what ends up happening, I think, is the fact that they are promoting their other shows, and now they got to promoting this show. And they've had stuff going on all along. They've had Nina Drama doing stuff with Fernando Vargas Jr., and they've had stuff going on, but now is when they're really kicking it in. And I think that is a big difference, and that's going to be sort of, if they go forward and have a long-term history in boxing, I think that's going to be more what it is.
But don't you want to have a good first impression?
I think so. Now this is not their debut. It's not the debut of Zuffa Boxing. This is a test run, I guess. January is supposedly when Zuffa Boxing is going to kick off and come in, and they're going to have their regular shows. And I think we'll get a lot more details this week and maybe after the fight about how they plan to run and how things are going to go. But I think this is kind of like a one-off, but sort of a test. And then, after this, we'll see how they go.
Yeah, but Turki Al Sheikh kind of handed them the biggest fight of the year, in my opinion. Too much on Dana's plate. I think they dropped the ball in the promotion a little bit. Just my opinion. I think there was too much going on. Maybe Turki Al Sheikh should have taken it over with somebody else. Maybe even bring somebody in, underneath.
Well, the ring. Here's the thing, right? I have said, I said this when I was interviewed by Chris Mannix on his podcast, and I've repeated this. I've said it to you on different things you and I did. They need more Dana, less Turki, right? I think that was a big problem. Like, Turki was getting more involved and Dana was getting less involved. And, Dana is the one that is the world-class promoter. But if you go back, and you look since this fight was signed, Ring, which is essentially Turki's, using it to promote the event, right? Ring, we think of it as a journalistic site. And I guess in some ways it still is, but it's really the promotional vehicle for Turki Al Sheikh for his fights. They've had stuff, right? But they're not the kind of promoters that UFC/Zuffa Boxing is. And UFC and Zuffa Boxing is not hasn't been doing it the same way. So now I think, that's why we're starting to see a lot going on.
Well, yeah, I mean, as we look in here, some of the comments here, production of the garbage. Yeah, compared to what it used to be, the production is down for whatever reason, whether it's because it costs too much money, which actually isn't true because production is, a dime a dozen nowadays. But Kevin, on that show.
Well, let me respond to that comment, because I think that's. Let's start with DAZN first of all. DAZN, can I say the F word?
You can say whatever you want.
I can say that word.
Sure.
DAZN fucking sucks. I mean, now they are owned by one of the world's richest people, right? They don't have a money issue, but their production is absolutely freaking horseshit. I mean, it is awful. And I think Chris Mannix is good. He's controversial because people don't like his scorecards, right? But Chris is a very good broadcaster. But the rest of their crew not so good, and their angles, they're to me, it's just really, really bad. And a lot of their, I don't know if any fans, if you guys who are watching this live, drop it in the comments if you agree with what I'm about to say. Their shows always look dark to me, right? Like it's not lit correctly enough. I mean, and this is, I think, going to be an issue with this fight card that I think concerns me. They announced the announced crew a week or 10 days ago, and there are a ton of announcers. That is a big problem with the DAZN cards, like way too many voices trying to get in, and they put too much garbage in that doesn't make sense, right? And even when you saw like the Jake Paul fights on Netflix, they have roving reporters, and there's too many voices. Like I think you have your host up in this up in the box. You have the play-by-play person, maybe one or two, for sure one analyst, maybe a second analyst, and then you have one reporter, and that's it. And we don't need these celebrity interviews that DAZN does and that Netflix was doing under the Jake Paul production. Dana is really good at production. That is one thing. I mean, you look at the UFC's fights and the way they're produced, way better. You know what he produces really well? Power Slap. Power Slap is produced really well. Whether you like the sport or not is a totally different thing, but it's way better production than when you get out of DAZN. And right now, DAZN is the only other alternative. ESPN's out of boxing, right? So there's nothing really consistent, especially for the high-level fights, where we're going to have a chance to get the casual fans, right? When a fight like Saturday was on ESPN Deportes, Oscar Valdez, us hardcore people, yeah, we'll tune in and watch that in Spanish or, and see that, or on some, Pro Box TV or whatever. We'll tune in and watch those fights, but the casual fans not. And that to me is a big problem.
But they also, as Tech Dumb Dad has said here, they're leaning on the social media aspect to get it done. They're not putting the work in. He's right. They're easy. Just the production companies, not Dana White. I will say but he doesn't allow the garbage. He doesn't allow the guest guy who's in the front row get an interview. That's not going to happen. It's very controlled. And when you have all these people, that was one of the worst things I've seen on when Turkey Al-Sheikh has it. You have everybody and their mother talking about the fight. And just get to the fight. I know he likes production or promoting an event, but it turns me off. Like, I mean, these hour and a half before another fight goes on, right. The flow sucks.
No, it's terrible. Sucks. But that's DAZN is doing those shows now. Turkey owns a percentage of DAZN, and those are DAZN shows mostly. And I think that is,
even Riyadh season.
What's that?
Riyadh season.
Yeah, those are mostly DAZN shows.
Oh, they're horrible. They're the worst.
Yeah, DAZN is awful. And, I think if they could keep Chris, like, I was disappointed not to see Chris Mannix isn't on this show, right? I mean, Chris Mannix, in my mind right now, is the absolute best boxing broadcaster. He's not a play-by-play guy, but he is the best. Forget Max Kellerman or whoever, Coppinger, whoever else you want to say. Chris Mannix is the best. And he should be on the broadcast. Now, I think bringing Kellerman in makes it better, right? That's good. But look at what we have now, and I don't even have the list in front of me, but you got Anik is doing play-by-play. Anik is great on MMA. We'll see how he does on boxing. John is really a talented guy, so I think he'll do good. Andre Ward, I like him, but he is 100% biased in favor of Crawford.
100%.
And so you're not going to get a straight view, from, Crawford could get knocked down and Andre Ward's going to talk about he won the round because he did something else, right? So, and we're going to get to talk about the fight in a little bit here and give our predictions. So, but Andre Ward, he's good, but, with Crawford being in the fight, he's there. Mark Kriegel was on. Kriegel, one of the best writers in boxing, just phenomenal. I should give a plug to his book on Mike Tyson, was incredible.
Kevin, I'm looking at this list here.
read them off.
What the hell? What are we doing here? You have Mario Lopez at the desk with Antonio Tarver, Mark Kriegel, he's very good, Mike Hoppinger, and Jim Gray and Heidi Adderall.
So Heidi Adderall and Jim Gray, are Jim Gray in the Hall of Fame. Heidi's working a lot of UFC shows. She is good. So I don't think you need two reporters. Number one,
do you need all that? You should kind of thin that down a little bit, don't you think?
Right. So Tarver was good. I don't have a problem with Tarver being on, but now what are we getting into? So we're going to be we're going to hear from Andre Ward and Kellerman at ringside. Then we're going to go up to the booth and we're going to get Coppinger. Who knows what the hell he's going to say at any given time. Antonio Tarver is good, but he's more of a ringside, guy that, that you want there. I don't know, Mario Lopez, he's good, but I'm not big on Skipper Kelp is going to be on there. We forgot Skipper Kelp. Yeah. So Skipper is a friend of Dana's, right? So Skipper is
that.
They went, they were friends of Dana, and Skipper's around all the UFC shows. He's just not in front of the camera and everything. I covered Skipper back when he was a boxer in the early 90s. He went by Saigon Skipper. And so he's going to be, if you watch UFC broadcasts and you see the role that Dean Thomas plays, that's the role that Skipper Kelp is going to play in this fight card. So, he's going to be at ringside and he's going to look at it from, a coach's perspective. I don't think that is the worst idea, but I think we just have too many people on these broadcasts. Now, I'm not going to criticize them yet because I haven't seen the production and how it's going to look. But I do know on these freaking DAZN cards, when they have, they'll have Ariel Helwani on there. They'll have, they have Mike Tyson's son on the Jake Paul fight. I mean, think of all these names that, that they have on these shows. They have the three Brit announcers a lot of the times, and then they have Sergio Mora, and they have what's his name, Todd Grisham, and I mean, there's just so many, and Coppinger shows up on them. There's just too many voices, and your head's spinning on where things are going. And we don't need to hear interviews from freaking celebrities in the crowd. Who gives a shit about what a celebrity thinks? We don't care.
Here's the other thing. It reminds me of WWE wrestling, when you have the two guys that are okay, they're famous, right? They want to get their shit in. They always want to, and it just becomes too complicated, and everybody wants to show their stuff. And it brings sometimes less is better. Sometimes less is better. And I've learned that in business. Less sometimes is a lot better.
Right. Yeah. So I think, here Dana will be in charge of the production. So I just think, he is better than whoever they have at DAZN that's doing this, right? So as a result of that, I'm confident that the broadcast will be better. I think John Anik will do a really good job. He's going to have to ride herd on Andre Ward to keep Andre Ward unbiased and fair. Because that's going to be difficult. But when Andre Ward is engaged and is into the fight, he's good. I think he's probably the best boxer / analyst that there is when he's engaged in it. You don't agree with that?
Well, what Andre bothers me is he had a great career. He did. I'll say a phenomenal career, right? But it was short, and then went right into broadcasting. It was short, but he went right to broadcasting.
Oh no, short. He won the gold medal in 2004, turned pro, and he retired 2018. 14
didn't have many fights though. Didn't have many fights.
So
no, what I'm saying, he didn't have many fights as far as because after Kovalov, and then he retired after who? Did he retire after Kovalov?
Let's look him at. I think Kovalev was his last fight. Yeah, but let me just look him up while you.
Oh,
talk.
my point being is they've put a lot of eggs in the basket of Andre Ward. And he, boy, when it's almost like, I hate to say, because he may be a friend of yours, but Tim Bradley, when he gets on a kick with somebody, he gets on that guy's bandwagon.
Tim Bradley is a Crawford guy too. Like Crawford's one of his best friends. So Andre Ward was 32-0, right? I mean, so he had 32 fights.
32 fights is a lot.
And he fought over an 18-year period. So, and he had.
He was out for a gap, though. He was out for a big gap there.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. Now, Tim Bradley, I think, is good, but he's not on this broadcast, so no reason to get into him. But
that's who he reminds me of. Andre Ward sometimes could get into that position of biases.
Yeah, no, I think 100% that, and I brought that up earlier. Like that's the first thing that I said when I mentioned his name. But if we can get Andre engaged and get him giving us what he sees, he has a brilliant mind. Like his mind is like Floyd Mayweather's for boxing, and he sees things that like not a lot of other people see. I would have loved to have seen Chris Algieri on this show. I think Chris Algieri is really a sharp guy. And, he's not a retread, right? Like, I don't mean this any disrespect to Antonio Tarver, because I have written when I worked at Yahoo that I thought he was a good broadcaster. But, like, let's take it to a new level. Let's change the faces. Let's change the voices, and don't always have the same, like, that's what I was really disappointed on Netflix's production when they did Tyson, right? It was the same, right? That Netflix didn't. It was looked just like a fight that could have been on DAZN, and that's what what to me was a problem.
And let me ask you this though, but don't you think you need a broadcast team for that is consistent?
Yes, I think that, and I think so. Look, if Turkey El-Sheikh is in this, he loves Coppinger for some reason, so we're going to get Coppinger on all these shows. And
evidently Max now.
And so Max, I think, is going to be in. Now, who's going to be the play-by-play guy? It cannot be John Anik. When they go forward long time, it's not going to be John Anik, because John is going to be doing UFC. And I know John loves boxing and he knows boxing, and I think Anik is a talented professional. So I think he'll do a good job calling the fight. But who is going to be their full-time play-by-play boxing announcer? They have to find somebody. And I don't think one of the problems is, that there's not a lot of good play-by-play guys out there. That's why there was so much excitement when Lampley came back, right? When Lampley came back, like it's been a long time. What was it, 2018 since HBO's last show? So he came back, earlier this year after being off for basically 7 years. And I think he's still good, but Jim was like a guy that, had a 99-mile-an-hour fastballs, now throwing 94 and trying to fool you instead of blow the fastball by you, right? Jim, still a good broadcaster, still a good boxing mind, but not the guy that he was at his peak at HBO. So, I don't think look, I'm an old guy, like you see the gray hair on the side of my head. You got to get younger people, and Jim's in his mid-70s, right? We can't rely on Jim Lampley. Even if you think he's still the best play-by-play guy, we can't rely on Jim Lampley to carry us, right? So I think, you need to go and get another play-by-play broadcaster. That's, because Anik cannot do it unless they get another MMA broadcaster and make Anik the boxing guy. And I'm not sure he's going to want to do that, because he's a diehard on MMA. But that we're getting a little far afield of the fight. So let's get into the fight, right? So I have my take on it, but let's get yours. Who do you see winning the bout?
This was a tough one for me, because I would go back and forth. 1 minute Canelo, 1 minute Crawford. I don't know if you saw that report that came out today about Crawford's shoulder. Do you see that?
No.
Fake news? Could be. Somebody reported that there's a lingering shoulder injury.
Crawford?
On Crawford. Maybe you should check it. I don't know. Maybe that's true or not. I don't know. But let me.
I'm retired. I'm not a reporter.
Well, you could find out from your buddies. You could find out. So anyway, here's my take. Every single time I've picked against Canelo, he's won. Every time I've picked against Crawford, he has won. Obviously, I picked him against Spence. The issue to me is going to be, does Canelo ever get old overnight, one night? Just ever get old? A bunch of wars. He's got a granite chin, but can he get caught? Crawford, on the other hand, hasn't been in the wars that Canelo's been in. A little longer. They're both, roughly the same age, right? The 35 and 34. Is that it? Right around there.
I don't have the ages in front of me, so go ahead.
My point being, this is a tough one to pick. But if I were going to put money down, and if I was a gambler, which I am, I would pick Canelo. And the reason being is because I think at some point he's just bigger and stronger at the end of the day. I don't think he'll be able to move. I don't think Canelo will be able to move that or Crawford. They're putting in the small ring. I do not think he'll be able to move the entire 12 rounds. I don't. Without, I mean, he's going to get hit in the arms and the shoulders, and I think so. Don't get me wrong.
Well, I like Crawford in the fight. Let me explain why, and I think you're missing some things here, George. First of all, look at what Crawford. Look at Canelo has done since 2021. His competition level since Bivol, which was early 2022, has dropped significantly, right? He fought Berlanga, who stinks, William Skull, who is nothing, right? I mean, he hasn't fought a lot of good competition. And he hasn't knocked anybody out. He has not finished anybody since 2021. Now, I get it that Crawford is moving up in weight, but of course, if you saw him and saw how he looks, he looks phenomenal with that midsection, and he is a big guy now. He is not a tiny guy. And I think Crawford has so many ways to win this fight. He can do so many different things. And I just think Crawford is going to outbox him. Canelo has one of the all-time great chins. Like Canelo's chin, you look at those Golovkin fights, and he didn't. Gennady hit him with everything, and Canelo just took it. And Gennady is one of the all-time great middleweight punchers. So I don't think Crawford has an option for a knockout. So Crawford's going to have to box and win over 12 period. But I think that that's what he is good at. He's a genius in the ring. He understands pacing. He understands angles. And I think he is going to really just flummox Canelo and outbox him a lot. I think Crawford is going to be quicker. I think Crawford is going to be able to change up when he needs to. The biggest thing that I think in this fight is Crawford has to be careful about not getting caught when he switches. Right. So when he switches from right to left, that is where there's an issue at. Canelo could, time that and boom, catch him. As long as he is careful with that and doesn't let himself get caught, I think he wins a 116, 112 type decision.
Here's fun. We're going to go off script. This guy may be the biggest dummy in the comments here. This guy obviously gets it. Shut up, you asshole. Like, what are you talking about? You're just the biggest dummy I've ever seen on comments. Just a total asshole. So I'm going to go off script here. He's this guy who's probably never gotten a ring before. Never, which I have, by the way, asshole. Anyway, the guy's just a dummy. We're giving you our picks. If you don't like it, don't fucking listen, you asshole. I mean, what
do you really think, George?
No, I mean, no, I'm saying like they come on. Oh, you're going to get hits boxing. No shit. Yeah, I do know. I've been in the ring before, you dummy. So anyway,
I think there's get some comments up there so we can respond to some of these comments. I like Crawford by decision.
We already know seeing old Canelo carrying Berlanga, not being able to adjust to Skull's movement, refusal to fight Benavidez. Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to what Commander Van. Put that comment back up. I think there's a lot of to what. Nope, that's the wrong one.
Wrong one. My bad. There you go.
I think I don't think he carried Berlanga. I don't think he could finish him. Right. You look at it. He had Charlo hurt and he couldn't finish Charlo. Right. I mean, think about what happened in this situation. I think Canelo's still a good fighter, but like I agree, like with Skull, he knew how Skull was going to fight him. That's how Skull fights, and you knew against Canelo it was going to be times 10, and he should have been able, in my opinion, to be able to adjust and corner William Skull and land something. But he hardly, Skull fought a shitty fight, and Canelo ripped him, and Skull deserved to be ripped. But guess what? So did Canelo. Canelo fought an unbelievably poor fight. And if that was just, one fight that's out there, and I would say, okay, that is just Canelo. But then you look and he fought Berlanga. Berlanga is garbage, and he should have gotten rid of Berlanga easily, and he did not. Berlanga went all 12 rounds with him. We saw what happened to Berlanga in his last fight, right?
Good.
Yeah, when somebody who wanted to fight him went out there and fought, he got it. The Charlo fight wasn't good. The Munguia fight was just like okay. John Ryder, he couldn't finish John Ryder. I mean, you go through all these guys, and I think Canelo is an all-time great, but I think we're starting. He's hit his peak, and he's kind of on that downward run.
And you know what? This brings up a good point. Crawford didn't bring that power up from his last fight. I don't know if he's going to be able to hurt Canelo at all.
Well, I didn't. I said Canelo has a great chin, so I don't think a knockout is going to be. But I think there's a difference. I think there's a motivational factor. Like when he's fighting Madrimov. Madrimov is a terrific fighter, but Madrimov is not Canelo. And I think Crawford was coming off the win over Spence. Had been off for a year. He sees a guy Madrimov. How many fights did he have? 9 or 10 fights at the time that they fought. I don't think he was expecting much from Madrimov. He wasn't. He didn't have the intensity and the focus, but I think it's going to be a different story on Saturday night.
What about the smaller ring, though?
I don't think the ring is 20 foot. I mean, so
Crawford wanted a 24.
Well, no, 20 foot ring is what's standard in Nevada, and that's what it will be there. So the ring won't have any effect on it.
Okay, let's go to the next comment. Here we go. Bud is 37. Bud is 37. Ooh. Okay, let me go home 1 second. Here it is right here. This one.
Nothing in Crawford's record that says he can beat Canelo. On the contrary, everything Canelo's record says. Well, Gerardo, I mean, look at the last couple fights that Canelo had, right? And now you look at what Crawford's doing and what he has done throughout his career. He's unbeaten for a reason. He was undisputed champion in 2 divisions. I think he is at least as good a boxer as Canelo Alvarez, if not better. He has more ways to win the fight, right? I am not sitting here saying Canelo is going to get skunked and, it's going to be, I think Canelo is a great fighter. He's an all-time great fighter. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame, and he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But I think at this stage of his career, against this opponent, he doesn't have what it takes to win the fight. Maybe you're going to be right. And say that. And I see Gerardo said in a later comment, it's a known fact that when you move up in weight, you lose speed. I disagree with that. I mean, sometimes you do. Everybody is different. Crawford is a special athlete. He is not the same as every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there. And if you saw his body, right, and saw how he looks, I don't think Crawford is going to be at a deficit. And even if he is a little bit less than, say, he was when he fought Errol Spence, right? He's fighting a guy, not 147, but 168. Canelo is not going to be that quick, relatively speaking, right?
Yeah.
He has seen a lot quicker guys. So I don't buy that, right? That thing. I think he is going to be fine there.
You don't think the motivation that Canelo is going to, get him up for this fight?
I think he's going to be up.
It's late in his career.
I think Canelo is going to be up, and I think Canelo is going to fight the best fight that he can possibly fight. Having said that, I wonder, does he have enough left in the tank to beat Crawford is a genius. Like Crawford is like Mayweather in the ring. His mind. I think of the last, say, 25 years in boxing, the guys that, to me, understood the game at the highest level and could adjust really quickly were Andre Ward, who will be ringside for the fight, Floyd Mayweather, and Bud Crawford. I think those three guys share that, that instinct and everything. And so as a result, I think, Canelo's going to be up. I think he's going to fight a good fight, but I think Crawford is just next level there.
Okay, can Crawford do the Floyd Mayweather game plan to beat Canelo, or is Canelo far
Canelo too far evolved
from the fight for it to be
of any use? George, I think, Canelo doesn't deserve it's 13 years ago that he fought Floyd Mayweather, right? Or 12 years ago, whatever it was. And he is a different fighter now than he was then. And I think it's unfair to bring him up. Now, is Crawford going to fight like Mayweather fought? No, they're different style of fighters, right? And I think the way that Mayweather fought, Mayweather was looking to counter. He was looking to make him miss. He was looking to make him expend energy. Crawford's going to look to make a miss, but I think he's going to do it in different ways. Crawford's going to use angles, right, George? I think Crawford's going to give Canelo different angles to look at, right? And he's never going to see the same thing. There's not going to be patterns building up in the fight. I think that's where we're going to see Bud's genius in this fight. Where Mayweather is a guy, he can stand in front of you and he can make you miss, and he turns his shoulders and he pulls back and he slips and slides, and Mayweather had such great feet. Crawford has great feet too. There's a lot of similarities there, but I just don't, in my mind, I don't think it's fair to Canelo to bring that up. He has evolved from that fighter, and B, I don't think that Bud can fight the way that Floyd fought.
Let's see if Matt Grant here has a comment. He says Crawford is 38 years old. He didn't look impressive at all at 154. What makes you think he will be better at 168 against a much better boxer than Madrimov?
Well, number one, I think Madrimov is a good boxer, and that was the fight of Madrimov's life. And it was a fight for Crawford coming off, the fight of his life, right? Fighting. So, the motivation for Madrimov is high. The motivation for Crawford is low. I don't think it was just, I think the worlds collided and everything came together in that way. And so I just think, Crawford has more ways he can win the fight than Canelo, in my opinion.
Okay. Let's go to this one here. Also from Matt Grant. Also, do you think he gets a decision in Vegas, even though Canelo is known for controversial scorecards? Good point. That actually is a good point.
I remember what was the rematch between Canelo and Triple G? 2018 was it? I think that was the second fight. I sat next to Chris Mannix, and he said to me before the fight started, I worry about the scoring in this fight and these judges. And then you kind of saw, what happened there. But I think, they have good judges scheduled for the fight. Go to BoxRec and find out, put up the judges on the screen. They have the judges on there. Steve Weisfeld's one of the judges. But I think the fight will be scored fairly. I think whoever wins the fight will get the victory. I sure hope so. But,
okay, we have Tim Cheatham. He's always pretty good. Tim Cheatham is always pretty good.
Tim is a Nevada guy.
Max DeLuca and Steve Weisfeld. Used to live like 2 towns over from me in New Jersey.
I think Weisfeld is really good. I think DeLuca is good. DeLuca used to be from California. Now he lives in New York. He and Julie Letterman are a couple, and so. Yeah, see, and I think Max is very good, and I think it'll be a fair scorecard by those 3 judges.
Okay, no CJ Ross is not going to be doing the
CJ Ross.
Was it CJ Ross? Who was the one? Ross. I know her last name was Ross. Who did Mayweather and
CJ Ross?
Yeah, jeez.
And then Adelaide Berg was the one that had 10-2 Canelo over Gennady Golovkin.
Oh, jeez. Well, she won't be doing it either. I could tell you.
Yeah.
Here. That was that one. There was one more I saw here that I had to get to. Yes, we do have solid depth of the fight. Real quick, Kevin, on the undercard, just real quick, because this fight actually I like. Vargas Jr., Callum Walsh. I like that fight. Anything you have anything? I mean, I get it. I mean, Callum Walsh is a Dana White fighter. He's going to be pushed to the moon. What do you think Fernando Vargas has to bring to the table here?
I think Emiliano Vargas is the better
Yeah.
fighter in the family. Fernando is, what is he, 17-0 with 15 or 16 knockouts,
15
but his
Dominican.
competition, hasn't. I mean, I think that there are two young guys on a similar path, right? And we're gonna see where they are. The thing, I have said, like, I think Callum is a talented fighter, but I think, they try to I'm trying to see how to I don't want to say they, because Dana wasn't really involved. Tom Loeffler was Callum's promoter at 360 Promotions, right? And so I criticized one of his opponents last year. When you looked at the opponent was 19-1. But then when you looked deeper than just the 19-1 record and look at who the opponent fought, and I wrote this in my story, the opponent was, had opponent guys he fought that were like 5-70. 15-125. I mean, go look at it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And I'm going to bring that up here in just a second.
It was common. That's common though. That was common, yeah.
But okay, so if you're Callum and you're saying you're ready for a world title or close to being ready for a world title, you can't be fighting guys like that, right? You have to be fighting guys. So I was critical of Callum. Now I think Callum's last time out, he looked good and he did a good job. I think the question is, I think Vargas is not the guy to be able to knock him off. I think this is still pretty smart matchmaking on the part of Tom Loeffler, who's working for Zuffa Boxing now.
Oh, is he really?
Yes. And I think you're seeing, that they picked a good opponent for him. I think it's 3-1, if I'm not mistaken, on Callum is the favorite. I'm not that into the fight, right?
I am. I think it's a good one.
I'm interested in the Bohacek fight, right? I think Bohacek is an interesting guy going against Brandon Adams, and that fight was kind of a mess when they fought in Puerto Rico and it was wet, and that was Bohacek, kind of got hosed a little bit in that fight.
No, I remember you making that comment, and it didn't go over well, but
what didn't go well?
Well, it didn't go well. You criticizing Callum Walsh.
I do. I just, what? I criticize whoever I want to criticize, including that moron that was in the comments before. And I won't criticize people. So here, I want to bring it up. Let me get this here. Dean Sutherland was the guy I was talking about. So it was March 25th of this year. So Dean Sutherland was 19-1 when he fought Callum Walsh, right? So you go, oh, good. So now he's fighting again next week. So who is he fighting? He's fighting Josh Thane, who is 2-0.
Okay.
Then we look at his opponents. He fought Jordan Granum 11, 142 and 5. Fernando Mosquera 6-14. Ramiro Blanco 18, 19 and 3. And there's a lot more here.
Is Reggie Strickland on that list?
Yeah, Reggie is not out there. At Venus Poplaska 6-26. William Warburton 26, 157 and 10. Ryan Tom 16, 16 and 3. Here's another. He fought Granum multiple times. Kevin McCauley. This would be the kind of record I would have if I was boxing, except I'd have 15 less wins and 12 less draws. 15, 175 and 12. He fought Arvidas Trisno 27, 79 and 3. So when I criticized that opponent, like everybody's saying, oh, what are you criticizing the opponent for? The guy was 19-1. Look who he fought. That's what I was criticizing, right? And then I saw seconds into the fight, the minute that fight started, I saw the way Sutherland reacted. I said, this guy's a bum. Like, he's no good. And now they have the fact that they have him fighting a 2-0 guy.
Yeah.
That tells you what his management team thinks about him.
Well, we used to do it all the time. We had one guy that we fought Reggie Strickland twice. We fought him twice. And Reggie Strickland is legendary for having I think he's like 200 and something. We had a guy
over 200 fights. I'm going to pull him up here while we're talking. Go ahead with your story.
And then the other guy, if you look up, was Lawrence Brisby. He was another guy, Virginia guy. We used to bring guys out from the street. And it was and they know they're going to lose. They just kind of take it for the cash. We had a Ron Kroll. He was another guy up in He lived on the reservation over in Michigan. He was another guy. So it's done. But so
Reggie, here's Reggie's record, and I have a great story about Reggie.
Good guy.
Reggie, 66, 276, and 18.
Oh, man, it's worse than I thought.
And now I think he has more fights than that because he fought under a lot of different names, right? So
Right.
he wasn't just Reggie Strickland. He would fight in Indiana this night as somebody, and then the next night he'd fight in Oklahoma as somebody else, and
Yeah, he did it all the time.
So he has a lot more fights than are on this record. But here's my story about Reggie that I think was great. I wrote a story about him probably when he had 250 losses, right? I was just talking about what is it like to fight that often and lose all that time. And then when he retired, I saw that he retired, so I called him and I said, Reggie, you fought over 300 times. You're going into managing fighters, and he said, and this isn't a direct quote because it's been 20 years now. I can't remember, but it was a hilarious line. He said, I got screwed by so many people during my career. Now it's my turn to do it to them.
I mean, I'm telling you, there was so many guys like that. Reggie Strickland, Greg Serb, the Pennsylvania, had the Pennsylvania commission here. I remember he told us, he's like, we're not going to ban him. He can fight. The guy can fight. He literally can. He just will carry you. And you know what? Fighters, unlike MMA, that you're thrown into the mix, they're not going to do the MMA, but there's a lot of money put behind some of these fighters. You got to build the record up a little bit, but holy cow, Reggie Strickland was legendary, and they knew exactly what he was in there for.
And Reggie started in the 80s, and so boxing was still, they didn't get tougher until the Ali Act came out, which was a few years after that, and so you had to have the federal ID and all that stuff. And these guys were able to get out there, George, and do a lot of crazy things. Buck Smith, there was a lot of guys.
Smith, another great guy, Buck Smith, and my brother Diz brings up Dennis the Boss Man Burley out of Scranton, Pennsylvania, another guy who they brought in just to lose. Good friend of mine, and what a surprise! We missed you, Kev. Look at that, Manu. Saying they missed you, buddy. They all missed you.
Well, I'm glad somebody misses me, because I think most were saying glad to get rid of that guy. But I think, boxing is at a stage now where there's a lot of good fighters in the sport. Honestly, there are a lot of really good fighters in the sport, but the sport is not put together the right way. Right. And I don't know if, I often would have hope, because I'm an optimistic person by nature. And I would say, hey, they're going to get it done. But then you look at what's going on and you just go, man, like it never, ever changes. And, like the biggest thing to me, when you look at a UFC fight card, whether you like MMA or whether you don't, if you look at a UFC card and you look at the matches almost every single week, right? They have got, number 6 is fighting number 7, or number 6 is fighting number 5, and they make even fights. And so you're not getting, every once in a while, you get a young guy that they know is a prospect that, fights, but that's not too often. And they make their guys fight tough fights. And so when you do that, even if you lose early, like I think there was this thing, HBO and Showtime had the ability in their contracts to cancel your contract if you lost. Mm-hmm. And that was really bad, and that hurt boxing, right, a lot, because now that made managers say, I'm going to take less risk because I got an HBO contract. I worked all this time. I don't want to lose the fight and not be able to come back. And what you really want out of guys is to say, hey, we believe in you and we think you're a talented guy. We want you to fight your ass off. And Arturo Gatti was the example of that. Arturo Gatti physically was not that great of a fighter, right? He was good. He wasn't a journeyman, but Arturo Gatti was not a De La Hoya or a Mayweather or a Canelo. Arturo Gatti, was a guy that had this, right? He had the huge heart. And in horse racing, you take Secretariat, who I think his heart literally when he had the necropsy was measured or weighed, it was like twice the weight of other horses, right? I think Arturo Gatti's heart probably, was twice the size of other fighters. I mean, he was a guy that just had balls and he really wanted to fight. And so as a result, we didn't care if Arturo Gatti won or lost. We care if he was fighting fighting, because you knew if Arturo Gotti's fighting, you had to come on and you had to see that, and you knew you were going to have a fight. And too often in boxing, they put these fights on like, I'll go back to Callum Walsh, that guy I talked about that he just fought, right? Sutherland. Like, why are we getting this? Put him in with somebody who can compete with him and push him. I think Callum has talent, right? I do. I'm not dogging Callum. I'm dogging the system, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
Well, here's the one thing, Kevin, that you said. There's a few other companies that do that. Nintendo, Pepsi, Coke. If you lose, they pulled their games. The games they pulled Mike Tyson's endorsements. That is actually true. I know that. I seen that in a book.
Well, I think when Mike, was out there, I mean, let's be fair, Mike, when he got endorsements pulled, there was things going on that were outside of boxing that I think,
he got, Pepsi was pulled after he lost. I know, and Mike Tyson's Punch Out was pulled when he lost. They actually switched it to Buster Douglas boxing, and it flopped horribly.
Yeah, how many people watch? I didn't even know that. But
no, and then Holyfield had Sega, and he had Holyfield's knockout or whatever it was. He loses, and he loses the contract. So there is something to that. But also, Kevin, you have to buy into these people. I'm learning that more and more in business.
You have to what?
They have to buy in and invest themselves in the fighters. You talked about promotion. Charlie Kirk died. Wow. Jeez. Breaking news. You hear that, Kev?
I did.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Let's keep the fights. Let's talk the fights.
Wow. Okay. So anyway, back to that. You got to invest on the fighters to have them be successful. Or have your promotion. There's no big guy that I want to sit there and put my money down to watch right now. If you tell me in boxing, there is none.
Yeah, I think the key thing is like do good matchmaking, right? So I think when you have like take Floyd Mayweather, right? On his way up, he was matched brilliantly. And I don't say that because of the record of the guys he fought. Bruce Trampler, in his mind, is the Hall of Fame matchmaker for Top Rank. And in my mind, the greatest matchmaker in boxing history. If you ask him, he'll say Teddy Brenner, who was one of his bosses. But I think, that Bruce, to me, was the greatest ever. And what he did was he thought ahead, and he said, so he did a couple of different things. He wanted to make sure that Floyd, when he was on the way up, fought guys that were runners. He fought guys that would stand and bang. He fought tall guys. He fought short guys. He fought southpaws. He fought orthodox. He was exposed to all styles on the way up. And I've told this story a number of times, and I think this is something that should be considered and taken into account when you think of it. Diego Corrales was a peer of Floyd Mayweather's, and he was a tall lightweight. He was a 130, then a 135. There was a guy named Tony Pep who had a similar build to Corrales. Trampler put Tony Pep in with Mayweather for the very reason I think Mayweather is going to fight Corrales one day, and I want him to see a big, tall, rangy opponent so that when they actually fight, this isn't the first time he's done it. And so that to me is smart matchmaking, right? So now, you can say, well, Tony Pep didn't have a prayer of winning. Nobody had a prayer of winning basically against Mayweather, but It was good matchmaking because it's helping advance the fighter. And when you're just going out there and you're just beating up bums, right? And, guys that are fighting dudes with 25 and 175 records, you're not learning from that. Floyd Mayweather learned from fighting Tony Pep.
And here we go here. Kevin, do you think Pretty Boy was the better overall boxer over Money Mayweather? I do. He was still going and getting you if he had or just wanted to, he could knock you out.
I get it. It's kind of the question that you get about who was better, Cassius Clay or Muhammad Ali, or Ali before the Supreme Court decision, Ali after the Supreme Court decision. I think it's the same question. And I would say that, Floyd, Pretty Boy Floyd was a better skilled boxer than Money May, but Money May learned how to win the big fights, right? He understood what it took. Floyd, Pretty Boy could punch. He wasn't a knockout guy, but he hurt you. You did not want to stand in the, you didn't see a lot of guys standing in the pocket against him and saying, hit me on the chin, right? Because he could crack.
Right.
Now he had hands that, his hands were delicate, and, he injured his hands a lot and all that. So if I had to pick though, and I had to say, I had to put a fighter in the ring to win one fight for me, would it be Pretty Boy Floyd, or would it be Money May? I would say Pretty Boy Floyd.
Oh, would you really?
Yes.
Wow. I would have gone opposite, but you would know because you were there. You covered more, only what? Every fight but two, right?
He had, I covered him in the amateurs, covered him in the Olympics.
I remember him in the amateurs.
And then I did, in person, I did 43 of his 50 fights.
Wow.
So
that is crazy.
And I'll say this, let me add this in, because I want to just respond. I see a number of people were mentioning Charlie Kirk, and you mentioned it. I said talk about the fights because we don't know, we don't have facts about what's going on, and I don't think it's really, I am sorry that anybody, we're in a despicable period of time where, because you have a political difference with somebody, and I'm assuming that's what this was about, that you take these kind of actions, but we don't have the facts to discuss that. So I think, that's better left for some other place, and, we can continue talking about boxing, and I'll say RIP and God bless him and God bless his family. And I am so sorry that, that we're in this kind of world today. But, when I was starting to say something about Mayweather, and now I forgot where I was going.
I was saying that when he was Pretty Boy, he could take you out of there, but when he's not, people will say,
I know what I was going to say. De La Hoya fought Pernell Whitaker.
Right.
That was April 1st of 97. So Floyd is a little over a year, maybe not even quite a year as a pro. And I was assigned on that card. I wrote the main event too, but I was assigned to do a story on Floyd. He was fighting on the undercard. I forget what that made his record. While I'm talking, if you can look up on April 1st, 97, he fought on that Whitaker De La Hoya undercard. And what was his opponent's, what was Floyd's record at that point? At any event, I go in the back in the locker room to talk to Floyd after the fight is over. And, he's all fired up about his performance. And I said, who do you want next? And he looks at me like dead serious. He goes, the winner. And I go, the winner of what? And he goes, the winner of the main event. And Floyd was a 130. And he wanted to fight the winner of Whitaker and De La Hoya, which was 147. And that fight was called pound for pound. And they were fighting for not only the championship, the welterweight championship, but fighting for recognition as number one pound for pound, at least according to somebody. I know at that point, I thought Roy Jones was pound for pound best in the world, but that's how that fight was marketed.
On that show, Floyd Mayweather got a first-round knockout against Bobby Giepert. Floyd Mayweather at that time didn't give his record here. It didn't say what his record was, but it did have him. He fought. I could just go to Boxing Rec.
Yeah, just go to and see what his. I think it was like his fifth or sixth fight, because Floyd turned pro in '96. He fought in October, was his pro debut, and Dana White. This is another interesting thing. Dana White was the sponsor of Floyd Mayweather on his first fight. So Dana had some clothing company at the time, and Floyd wore Dana's clothing into the ring. And so, yeah, Dana White but that was at, I believe that fight was at Boulder Station in Las Vegas in October of '96. That was his pro debut. And then he fought a number of times. And then the fight I'm talking about is April of '97 on the Mayweather. I'm sorry?
He was 5-0.
So he was 5-0, and he's saying, I want, and he wasn't kidding, right? He was ready to fight Pernell Whitaker or Oscar De La Hoya. That was pretty amazing stuff, right?
The craziest thing is Dana was in the clothing business.
I forget, it was some dog. The brand was named after some dog, and something box, and George, do this. Google Floyd Mayweather, Dana White pro debut and see what the sponsorship is, and you'll see that. And that's out there. But yeah, Dana sponsored Floyd in his first pro fight. Bowling something. It's like bully boxing or bowling something with a B.
Oh boy, Bullenbeiser boxing gear. What
Bullenbeiser? There you go.
What does that mean?
Okay. So that was a dog of some kind, right? And Dana had Bullenbeiser boxing. He sponsored Floyd in that debut.
Oh, Lord.
Floyd it was like crazy, right? All my worlds started coming together later, right? Because I knew, like at that time, I knew Dana from around Vegas. Like, he wasn't involved in MMA yet, I mean, I think he was probably like he was managing some fighters, but I saw him around the gym. I used to go to the Golden Gloves gym a lot, and that's where Dana and Mike Tyson got to be friends. And I would see Dana in there. Dana was doing a lot of different things. Like at one point, Dana was going to be a referee. Another point, he was going to be a trainer. Another point, he was going to manage fighters. He had a lot. Like Dana always loved boxing.
Not for nothing, but he could fight a little bit.
Dana could fight. Yep. But part of the reason that I've always taken seriously when I was covering that Dana was going to fight, not fight, Dana was going to get into boxing, was because I knew how much he loved the sport, right? And that was one of those things that that he just loved it so much, and then he couldn't make headway into it, and he finally ended up going into MMA, and of course had phenomenal success.
Boy, that was the biggest pivot in the history of pivots, wasn't it?
And it did well for him, right?
Well, think about it. Do you think there'll ever be a company that can sell for the multiples that it has? You figure he bought it for $2 million, sold for $3.3 billion. Do you know how hard it is?
Over 4 billion they sold for.
Over 4. Okay, so you bought it for 2.
$2 million.
$2 million. Think about the multiples you'd have to do right now, because no team is right now. No team, no professional is going to sell for $2 million.
Well, but I mean, think about this. Like, so I think that was a phenomenal business story, right? So in 2001, you pay $2 million for it. In 2016, you sell it for over $4 million. I think it was if I remember the exact figure, it was 4.025 billion. I think that was the number. Okay. That was, how many years? 15 years, right? Pittsburgh Penguins were sold to Fenway Sports Group in 2021 for $900 million, and now it looks like Fenway Sports Group is going to sell them for $1.5 billion. It's certainly not the same, multiples like you're talking about.
Yeah, but I mean, multiples.
Look at the appreciation in just 4 or 5 years. Now you go over, 15 or 20 years, and that's, it's here.
You're going to be in the trillions.
Yeah.
You got to be in the trillions. Think about that. There's no company that's going to sell for that. No way. Not now. Not maybe 100 years from now or something, or 50 years from now, maybe.
Like I just think, and one of the things I've said this on interviews, one of the things that concerns me when Dana first announced the formation of his boxing promotional company, I wrote 2 columns on KevinIole.com, really praising it and saying I thought it was a great thing. But like what I've seen since was, Dana giving a lot of stuff over to Turkey. And I said, what they need to be successful is more Dana, less Turkey. And, I think Dana is the person who understands how to promote and how to build things. And Turkey does not. Now, Turkey is a guy, he loves boxing. And I think Turkey has a place to play in this. But I think the front man and the guy making the decisions on how to promote and how to position and all that kind of stuff has got to be Dana, not Turkey. The fact that Turkey is retaining such a visible role concerns me a little bit.
Is Dana going to be at Dana will be at the show, but who's going to be the front guy? But is Dana going to be the front guy?
Dana's going to be the guy talking. Yes, no doubt about it. I mean, Dana's going to be the guy.
Turkey's going to be
the one thing that I say that we don't know yet is, I mentioned this is not part of the Zuffa Boxing regular deal that they're going to do with Riyadh season, right? That's going to start. Dana had said last time I talked to him about it, he said that was going to be in January. That may have changed a little bit, right? But let's assume for the sake of argument now it's January. So this is kind of a kickoff, sort of like Canelo did that one extra fight on DAZN when he signed the huge deal with DAZN back in 2018 or 2019 when he moved up and fought that one fight, Rocky Fielding. This for the Zuffa Boxing is kind of that same type of thing. So we'll see how it changes once, now it's actual Zuffa Boxing, fights going on. But I just, I hope that what they do is they show other promoters that it will work if you go out there and you give good fights and you do all these, you treat the sport the right way and you give the fans something for their money.
I think they will. Here we're approaching an hour here, Kev. A little bit over. We have one more here on here. It says, love how you guys are putting over combat sports and not burying it. 100%. We appreciate that, Rich. Richu.
And you know what? Like, I want to say this because, I was highly critical of a lot of things that went on in boxing because, you know why? I freaking love boxing, and I've loved boxing all my life, right? My dad fought in the Army, and when I actually attended in person, George, Sugar Ray Robinson. Mm-hmm. How many people alive today can say they saw Sugar Ray Robinson fight in person? I was like 5 or 6 years old at the time. But my father, Sugar Ray Robinson fought what turned out to be his final fight of his pro career. I was there at that fight with my father, and I saw a Sugar Ray Robinson fight. I became an Ali fan watching on TV as a kid. And you can't see this, but I have Ali there. I have Ali here, Ali Frazier here. I have an Ali Frazier Neiman painting right there. I get a whole bunch of and hang on, let me get something here. Talk a second.
Go ahead. All right. Well, guys, let me see here. We got another one. Will Turkey make Crawford actually stand there and fight for the good of the sport? I don't think he's going to do that. I think he is a Crawford guy, and I think he's going to let him do what he wants. Oh, there it goes. There goes Kevin. Kevin trying to get stuff together. There he goes.
That wasn't good.
No, what the hell are you doing? Oh, what do you got there?
You saw
your Ali ring given to you by
Muhammad Ali.
Kevin, you have all those things in the background. Now they could see that on the documentary I did, where I went into your home and did all that stuff. They could see it there. The documentary is on my channel. But
yeah, let's talk about that documentary because I want to tell a funny story. I don't think I said this to you, right?
Oh shit.
So George did this documentary on me, which was, I am so honored that he did that, right? And it was phenomenal. It came out really, really well. But I got George at his hotel, and we went to the UFC media day, and then we came over to my house. And I was showing George around my house, and I didn't realize that he's recording me for this documentary. And I'm like, well, this is my Willie Stargell Pittsburgh Pirates wall. And I'm talking all this goofy stuff and showing him, I showed him my cufflinks that I got from President Obama and, and all these different things that I have, I have in my library in the other room down there. I have a bunch of pictures of me and fighters on the wall and everything. And I'm in there talking to George about all that stuff. And I'm thinking this is just he and I shooting the crap. And then all of a sudden it's in the documentary. And I would have certainly been talking a lot differently about that.
Well, it made the documentary. Are we talking George Djokovic now? No, that was me. I did it. No, George, a good friend of mine. Yeah, he did.
This George.
You George, yeah, me. I did the documentary. Me and Tech Dumb Dad.
Give him your YouTube channel page so that if people are logged in on my page.
Yeah, Tech Dumb Dad has been on there. We met up on George Djokovic's podcast a bunch of times there. He's done we've had good conversations. There's a Potter brand with Georgie Bagels. switched it over to Georgie Pickles.
There's a couple questions on there from Jose. Put those questions up and let's talk about those.
Okay, we have, will Turkey make, this one I did when you were out there fumbling around. Will Turkey make Crawford actually stand there and fight as similar to what he did to Shakur, and fight for the good of his company?
Turkey can't make anybody do anything once the bell rings, right? If he could have, Canelo would not have fought William Skull. William Skull wouldn't have fought the way that he did. So no, Turkey can ask him to fight, but Crawford's going to fight the way he wants to fight, which I think, hey, look, I think it's going to be a good fight. Like, no, yeah. If I thought the fight was going to suck, I would say it was going to suck. I want to say this too, right? Because you can go look it up, as they say. Who said that? Yogi Berra, right? Or Casey Stengel? Somebody said that. Some baseball player. So. You can look it up. 2023, after Canelo fought Charlo, I was either the first or second question at the post-fight press conference, and I asked Canelo about fighting Crawford. And he got pissed, and he said, would you let me enjoy this win? And I wrote an entire column that day on the I talked to Steven Espinoza, who was the head of Showtime at that point, and I wrote my column on that Charlo post fight, advocating for Crawford versus Canelo. So I wanted this fight long before Dana White was involved, long before Turkey Sheik was involved. I wanted this fight for a long time. So I think the fight is going to be good. But however the fight goes, Turkey has no say in whatever it did. And then, Jose also asked, and I think this is a good question, and this is something that I think, should be addressed. Why didn't Crawford cross over to the mainstream? You're not a really hardcore boxing fan if you didn't hear of Crawford, because he's the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. But that being said, his PR is fucking unbelievably horseshit. Terrible. And they did a poor job, and his PR person, who I will not name, acted like her responsibility was to keep him away from the media instead of allowing the media to talk to him. Because, I did a story on him when I was working for Yahoo. And I talked about him when he went to Africa and he was helping, get clean water for people over there. And he did so many good things for people, charitable things. And I talked to a million of the people around him. I talked to one of his school teachers, and this guy is a really, really good guy. But he has been sheltered, not by him, but by the people around him, and they've kept him away and out of the media spotlight. And I think he also was one of those guys that I think, kind of fell under the radar in terms of how good he was, right? And he didn't have a lot of big name opponents. Like, he fought Ricky Burns. And I remember I was on, I think it was the BBC, if I remember correctly. It could have been Sky Sports, but I'm pretty sure it was BBC. And when he was fighting Ricky Burns, BBC's asking me, do you think Crawford can stand up to Ricky Burns? I'm like, what? He's going to walk right through him. What do you mean, can he stand up to him? But that, people didn't know about Bud because, he didn't have a lot of he fought the guys that were there, but he just happened to be in divisions where there weren't a lot of really, really good opponents, So I think that became a big problem.
And you hit that around the head about the PR guy. Well, not guy, but my God, how do you not? The biggest fight of the year. How long we've been talking about this? The biggest fight of the year, and then you're pulling him away from the media. Not a good move. It was exactly what happened after Spence. After he beat Spence, goes on Joe Rogan, and should have done the world tour, and you didn't hear from him for a year and a half.
Yeah. Well, that George, I think so. What are we now? September 10th. I think it was August 17th, if I remember correctly. His team put Crawford is now done with media and is going to training camp and locking down until he gets to Las Vegas. Are you fucking kidding me?
I know.
Get it, part of the reason that you're making these 8 and 9 figure paydays is for the very reason to do the media to make the fight as big as possible. And I just do not, I see Commander Vander put his comment up there. I disagree with that. Crawford did want to sell his fight. He's a smart guy. I have talked to Crawford. I have some interviews on my YouTube channel with Crawford, and he was really good. He is a smart guy. And there's an interview with him I did in LA at the Yahoo Sports Studios that was also really good. You know, he is a smart dude. I remember talking to him about when Nipsey Hussle died, and you know, Crawford and Nipsey Hussle had a relationship. But you know, he didn't. He's not a guy that suffers fools gladly, right? And he did. You know, he would get asked, "Who do you want to fight next? What do you think of your opponent?" But if you ask him something a little bit different, he is actually a smart guy. And I would recommend Mark Kriegel's story. Search for Terrence Crawford, Mark Kriegel, and Miss Deborah. Miss Deborah is his mother. And Kriegel did a phenomenal story on Terrence, and it's really worth reading because you get to know who he is. And he refers to his mother as Miss Deborah. That was on ESPN.com. Just search for that, and you will really appreciate that.
ESPNfrontrow.com. It's on there.
You'll really appreciate that story. So Crawford did, Commander Vander, you know, do it, but part of it was he wasn't allowed to always do the interviews. What was his it was Dan Rafael and I both in the Madrimov fight were denied by his PR person to talk to him. I covered the freaking guy's whole career. Dan Rafael was at ESPN.com and USA Today, and she said, "Oh, Bud's not doing any interviews." And you know,
do you think that some of it was Bud or no?
I mean, I think and Andre Ward had that same publicist.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and so you know, I think that's part of. I think Bud might have had a little bit to do with it, but I think that she pitched herself to say, I will keep this out, as opposed to, you know, you joked about Fred Sternberg before. Fred Sternberg is the best publicist in the freaking history of boxing. And he's one of the best publicists in sports history because he gets it. And, you know, one day we should interview Fred about the Manila Ice story, because this was shit that Fred just made up about Manny Pacquiao, because at the time Manny's English wasn't very good, and so you couldn't get that kind of volume of interviews. Manny was willing to do all the interviews, right? But his English wasn't that great. So Fred created this whole Manila Ice thing, and there were people believing that in the gym Manny came up with some new punch and that he was referring to it as Manila Ice. And it was great because it got so much attention and so many people talking to it. And you have to, as a publicist, you have to say, I'm in boxing and it's behind, and forget about other countries, because it's, you know, I know every country's sports are different, but in the United States, boxing was, and I'll eliminate UFC because this story came in 2005, right? Boxing was behind the NFL. It was behind the NBA. It was behind Major League Baseball. You know, and you can start going down all the other things. Now it's definitely behind the UFC, right, and MMA. And you think of all these things were big. So you have to work extra hard to be able to get attention for boxing, and that's what Fred did. And on this particular publicist side, you know, she tried to keep people away from the fighter. So I don't, you know. That's a long way of saying that, you know, Crawford
they do it to themselves. I mean,
yeah. It should not have happened. But
nope.
Anything else? We got any more, George, or what?
No, that'd be it. That looks like that. Last one there. We're working on an hour there. Then,
put El Cuerpo's up there.
Oh, I didn't see that. Was there one up there?
Right next one down.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't see that. Canelo will be remembered as a throwback legend that didn't wait to move up in weight for challenges.
100%, I agree. Now, I don't like his last 5 fights, you know, since the Bivol fight up until this fight. I don't like who he fought, and I thought he kind of got away. You know, he should have fought Benavidez, and he hasn't. You know, it's But I agree with that. I mean, Crawford fought guys. He fought Austin Trout when Trout was at his peak and was a tough guy to fight, and didn't have a big name value. He didn't have to fight him. He fought Arslandy Lara at that same point. He didn't have to fight Mayweather when he was 21 years old, right? He took a lot of those fights, and I 100% agree with what they said.
Do you know the purses of the fight?
I don't know the purses yet. I didn't look, so unfortunately for me, since I'm retired, that's one of the things that I'm not doing. Like I would have known that before, but I don't know. But they're both making 8-figure paydays, and it wouldn't shock me if Canelo's close to a 9-figure payday for this.
And one more here. I hope Canelo gives us a good fight and Crawford stands in the pockets. Not going to happen, I think.
Crawford's not going to run, right? Crawford is not necessarily going to stand flat-footed. I think Crawford's going to use his feet. Crawford has great feet. He's going to move
in the pocket. He's certainly not going to stand in the pocket. Kev, if he stands in the pocket, he's getting.
Well, it depends on how we're going to say stand in the pocket. I mean, we're going to stand in the center of the ring, and neither of us move, and we're just going to trade. No, he's not going to do that. But I think he's going to create angles. But he's going to be in front of him. He's not going to use the 20 by 20 ring. He's going to be in front of him.
Oh, there you go. I think I'm going to bet all I got on Bud. If you take my pick, yes, and I have picked Canelo, so go with Bud.
And I'm taking Bud Tavares, so I'm with you. I think I think it's going to be a good fight, and I don't think it's a slam dunk. When he fought Errol Spence, the day the fight was announced, somebody asked me who's going to win, and I said Crawford, easy, and people are like, what? And I'm like, to me, it just was it was the same thing when Winky Wright fought Felix Trinidad. I remember people were like going, and I was actually on the documentary, before the fight that, how they interviewed a bunch of the writers and everything. And I was asked, who do you think's going to win the fight? And I'm like, who's going to win? Winky's going to destroy him. And I love Tito Trinidad. Like, we were close. I love Tito, but it was no doubt to me.
Matchup. That was a bad matchup for Trinidad.
Yeah. I mean, that Winky Wright was going to always beat him. I have liked Crawford in this fight, but I don't think it's a blowout, right? I think Crawford, Canelo can win the fight. Like Winky Wright versus Trinidad. To me, the only way Trinidad was going to win that fight was, a hope and a prayer. Crawford and Spence, Spence had more than a hope and a prayer, but I thought Crawford very solidly would win that fight. This fight's a tough fight, but I like Bud.
We had a couple of you in Mexico from the guys. That's good though.
I like it. Hey, give him credit. Like I like it, So what do you think, George? We done or let's give 30 seconds if anybody wants to ask any more.
30 seconds more. Pop out.
30 seconds or a minute. What do you think?
Let's give him some time. I got Michelle out here.
So if you want more questions, we'll get that. George, did you get my Sugar Ray Leonard autograph?
Of course I did. Of course I did.
Now let's pull this up. I want you to look not at the picture, but what did the man write?
Kevin, you're the best. Sugar Ray Leonard.
If I got up and I walked over to that wall and there's a picture of Floyd Mayweather and it's signed, what do you think that says?
You're the best, Kevin. Certainly doesn't have me anywhere in there. Yeah, exactly.
So I think we are finished here. It doesn't look like we got many.
Kevin, we got to do this more. Hopefully, but let's do it. Let's do it live after the fight Sunday, if you can do it Sunday.
All right, we'll do it Sunday.
When do you think the fight will come off? Will it be an early one or no?
The UFC is going to be on before that, so my guess is going to be after 11 Pacific. I mean 11 Eastern.
All right. Well, we'll go on the spur of the moment there. We'll see what happens.
So plan on us sometime on Sunday. I don't think we'll get my. Hey, you know what? We could if anybody, whoever's left on here right now, give us a thumbs up if we did a live after the fight and we talked about the fight, got your opinions and everything. Would you join up? So if you would join up on Saturday night, George, is that too late for you? Can you do it that late?
I can do whatever.
Yeah, but you got to work. I know, and you got Coach Diz that's going to keep you busy.
We'll see what happens.
Maybe I'll see if Jersey Joe will do it.
Jersey. All right, Kev, let's wrap this up, buddy. I will call you over the weekend.
All right, man. Good to talk to you. Thanks, George.
All right, buddy.